AI, that's all we hear these days. AI isn't the future of healthcare, it is here now. Today's episode, I'm going to detail the day in the life of a medical sales account manager, a regional sales manager for an AI MedTech company selling to physicians and hospitals. This is a really cool job that's taking cutting edge technology to help benefit patients, help assist physicians in many different capacities. It could be planning surgical, like a TAVR valve, taking a scan and running AI through it to provide an in-depth analysis. It could be intraoperatively AI technology to help the physicians during surgery. It could also be optimization for the internal workflow for the doctors and the hospital staff, from note taking to procedural notes, and using AI to expedite that. AI and MedTech is really exciting, so I'll highlight the day in the life, but at a really high level, there's a lot of startups providing this technology to hospitals and physicians. It's going to be a new field. It's really exciting, but it's going to be very difficult. It's very different than traditional med device account managers roles. This is very typical to tech sales, where you're calling on many different customers to get the sale. Typically in med device, if you're selling a product, you have your list of accounts, your competitive accounts, and accounts you need to break in, and it could be 15 to 20. You know what your days are looking like, you know who you need to call on. In med tech and these startups in AI, you're calling on anyone who would get on the phone and talk to you. And when you have, for example, a physician or a clinical champion interested, the sell is not over. You need to work with so many stakeholders within the hospital to advance the AI technology to where it needs to be. That could be the service line directors, it could be the AI and IT leaders. Now with AI, there's governance boards at these small and large hospitals that would need to review what the AI is doing and how it's using patient data. You would also maybe interface with the different service departments, cardiology, the OR service line, or radiology. So there's many different stakeholders, and a lot of us are familiar with getting to the VAC or NPR, new product requests, where any new technology has to be vetted economically before it's decided on for the hospital clinically. But with these new med tech companies and AI, typically you're going through a VAT process or NPR, and then you're getting triggered into the legal, the IT review, and then now these AI governance boards. It's still a really exciting space. It's a little bit different from traditional med tech. So remember, you're calling on an unlimited list of hospitals or physicians, and you're navigating many different stakeholders at the C-suite level and director levels. Hospitals are rightfully cautious to bring AI, but the ones that are differentiating their program. It can optimize workflow and improve clinical outcomes. The big thing though is, selling AI is not like a tangible stent or TAVR valve, it's untangible. So you really have to use conceptual selling, and the value proposition needs to be tailored to each stakeholder. To the physician, you're hammering the clinical outcomes and how it's going to improve clinical outcomes and workflow and give them time back. From the service line, it's improving the hospital's workflow, the clinical outcomes, or differentiating this hospital from its competitors. There's many ways to approach the value proposition for each stakeholder, but you have to sell conceptually, as you're not going to be able to show them anything. It's more of a technology and a service, right? So that is really difficult for a lot of people who are used to physical products. And it's so funny because so many of us are familiar with trunk stock, where your car is full of product, you have demos, you're pulling up to hospitals or the clinics, and you're pulling out your big bag, and you're going to the OR, pulling out your products for the implant to serve that patient. That is not the case. I carry a briefcase, I'm dressed up most days like this, and it's a little bit different, but I absolutely love it. The pros for me is still the cutting edge technology and how we're delivering better patient outcomes. And two things really is learning how to sell a value proposition for this technology, positioning myself in a rapidly growing sector. And the second thing is, really cold calling and cold sales. Med device, I talk a lot about account management. In these roles, you're calling not anyone, but you're qualifying leads, you're reaching out, and you're really having to pick up and dial, email, LinkedIn message to generate prospects and leads, which is, like I said earlier, a little bit atypical from typical roles. The cons for me is a sales cycle is a little bit longer. With med device products, you could get in for evaluation pretty quicker if you're on contract, but with AI and med tech, it's going to be a long haul. These processes could take 12, 24 months, maybe 6 months if you're lucky. It just depends on how fast the hospital is going to move and what happens in IT and legal, which is typically a black box. A lot of us seasoned med device reps know you get a clinical champion barking up the tree, it's going to drive product adoption and implementation into that hospital a lot faster. But with this med tech, it's getting stuck in legal or IT, which the rep and the physician does not have much input on. They can position, and you need to position your submission really well to expedite and answer all questions so it doesn't get bounced back. But it's a long sales cycle because of that. I want to say it's a con. I think this is very important from a patient and information protection and HIPAA and all that. But the con and the pro is that there's high scrutiny from hospitals adopting this new technology, and rightfully so. We need to protect patient information. But as a sales rep, that's going to be challenging to navigate. So you need to have great conversations with your leadership about where you are within the sales process, right? So what I want to do now, I'm trying to think. What I want to do now is talk about a day in the life of MedTech AI sales. And I'm going to base this loosely on my experience. So there's three things of how I approach my day. I could get into detail about a really specific day, hour by hour, and I think I'll do that for the future. For this video, I want to talk about a really high level, how I approach my job. And it's going to be three different categories of how I view accounts. First is going to be prospects. All salespeople know prospects in your future accounts are important for your pipeline. Knowing that these prospects are going to take anywhere from 12 to 24 months to come online, you're not focusing 100% of your effort. I spend, let's say, maybe 10 to 30% of my effort finding new business and prospecting new business. I go after, I would say, low-hanging fruit, academic centers, people engaged in new technology, larger programs that would utilize my product more. That's all really important. And when I approach them, many different ways. I could ask my old buddies in med device to see if they have a referral. I could go online and directly message them. The phone number's online, so I could call the lab or the clinic. I can talk to someone that's using my product already and see if they could introduce me through, maybe they were fellows or in training together. Many different ways to go about it. And different from med device account management, I have a really clean checklist of what I do with accounts. Typically, I'll meet with a physician or the nurse practitioners first to understand the clinical value. If there's interest and I can show that clinical value and they're on board, we'll advance to the service line director to kind of understand the next processes of implementation, from the new product request, contract submission, all the way through whatever their process is, be it IT, legal, etc. I really qualify my leads because I know this is a difficult process to navigate through the hospital. So I really need to make sure that the physician understands what we're going to be up against and that it's going to take his or her support to get through the end. Typically, I'm going to position that I'm not going to burden them, but it's important for them to advocate why this is a need to have or a must have for their hospital and why it's going to improve their hospital. Clinical outcomes, utmost of importance, do no harm. But hospitals are like, they need to see a couple other things in clinical outcomes, right? Efficiencies, optimization, cost reduction, things like that are going to be important from a hospital C-suite perspective. New business is the lifeblood of any company, but like I said, it's a long sales cycle, so that's 15 to 30%. The next, part of my day would be, I would say kind of project management in a sense. We have accounts that are prospects, and once they convert to interest and are navigating that process, I'm navigating all those accounts in different stages of contracting. It could be initial contracting with VAC or NPR, where we're getting to the committee, making sure we're staying on track and on agenda. Often you're set for January, then you get bounced to the next committee, and it meets in February. So making sure my clinical champion insists that we're top of the agenda to be reviewed. Once we receive approval, and I make sure to prep my clinical champion and the service line administrator bringing it to the VAC with the clinical value, what the product is, and very clear understanding of how it's going to help the hospital and the patient. If they don't understand and someone asks, what is this product, and they stumble, it's not going to look good and it's going to bounce you to the bottom. If there's no clear pricing, all that you need to get figured out so when they go to VAC. Once we get past VAC, again in this project management role, which I would say is anywhere from 30 to 50%, I'm navigating the next steps. A lot of that is just really good questions. What are the next steps? What is typical of your hospital in implementing new technology? How does your hospital approach new AI technology? How are we going to get through, legal or IT? Typically, the service line director will be my bird dog and point me in the right direction, and we would navigate each stakeholder appropriately. Some hospitals, you would work in parallel. Maybe you're setting up the revenue cycle, IT, and AI at the same time and working with 3 different coordinators as you project management in that. Some want to move in a linear, sequential fashion where you need to get through VAC first, then legal, then contracting again, then AI assessment. It's up to the hospital. You can't change that. But what you can control is having clear understanding of what the next steps are to advance this new technology for your physician who is eager to deliver this to patients. If you're writing emails saying, just circling back, hey, just checking in, you're not in a winning position. You need to understand clearly what the next steps are. So every time you close a meeting, it's imperative that you get a check-in or follow-up on the schedule to meet with these people because they become very elusive. You have a great meeting, they say, you close, hey, what does next week Thursday look like? Or when can we meet again to review what we have done for IT? And they say, oh yeah, 2 weeks is fine. But I would say, hey, listen, that's great. I know this process could take long. Let's look at a third week. Thursday, you said is good, afternoon? Okay, perfect. Can we get that time on your schedule? Thursday, 1 p.m., 15-minute meeting, just understanding where we are to make sure I'm supporting you appropriately. If you let that meeting fall off, you're going to be there 3rd, 4th, 5th week. Hey, how are you? Just checking in. You don't look professional. You do look professional. You don't look great. You're kind of lost. And if you're lost, you can't tell your story of how you're moving this account forward, right? And then the last thing in MedTech, AI sales, I talked about a lot of startups that have a huge focus on bringing in new business and getting accounts to commercialization. The third would be those commercial key stakeholder accounts that are huge partners. How can you continue to support them? This is very similar to med device where you're account managing, driving sales, driving utilization, therapy awareness, growing market share. Here, typically, you're not really competing against anyone else. So it's all about utilization. How are you approaching that account to increase utilization? First, you need to understand how they're using your software. Is it on specific patients? Is it on specific departments? Like, for example, are they just using a cardiology? Mine's a cardiology product, but understanding where your product's being used. And for example, for my product in cardiology, if they find it really beneficial for 15% of patients, and in the back of my head, I know they have gone through all the work to set up the contract and IT, legal and AI and reimbursement, I'm going to find ways to encourage them to grow their utilization. And that could be candid conversations. Doc, it seems like you're finding a lot of value in patients A, B, C. Why is that? And she might share, I'm concerned about X, Y, Z. And I say, well, if you're finding value on A, B, C, have you thought about patients D, E, F, a different patient phenotype? But maybe these have kind of the same things where we could add value with our MedTech solution, right? And maybe they try a couple and maybe they say, oh, wow, Matt, thanks so much. That makes a lot of sense. We are finding value. However, we're not finding value on the, F. So then we'll circle back in a week or two and see if we could find a different way to add value and find a way to grow our utilization from 5%, 10% to 100%. A lot of times it is clinical value in finding the patients that your product does really well on, but it could also be workflow. Bringing in AI and new technology, it's very unfamiliar and it disrupts workflows that have been established for a long time. So maybe they want to use you more and the physicians say, yeah, we're going to use you for everything. But then you find out that one of the admin support in the hospital is overburdened by your request and there isn't a good workflow. So how can you go there and triage that? How can you be a problem solver? That is what sales is. Be a problem solver. How can you facilitate this bottleneck, leave it so that more cases can come through and you can help serve more patients, help the physician take care of more people and provide a safer outcome, a better outcome, right? So we talked about utilization and project management. All that is really is good communication. It's not like a hard skill. It's just, knowing what questions to ask, and you could have 3 written on your desk whenever you close a meeting, and then figuring out what the problem is. A lot of times we try to apply the same process to every person, every hospital, but we are all unique individuals. Hospitals are basically living beings that you need to approach as an individual, and you need to get in there and establish relationships. A lot of the things I've talked about are done remotely, especially in startup. You need to be really efficient with your time. In-person sales is super important. I think a great way to establish relationships and uncover hidden issues that you might miss remotely or online, because you can't always get that candid feedback on the ground. But being able to get into an account and identify not so much a misalignment of the value proposition, but where efficiencies are challenging the hospital and where you could help them improve. It could be challenges to reimbursement. It could be challenges to transmitting images, for example. It could be a political battle between two physicians. How can you go in there and alleviate that issue to increase utilization? Utilization or true sales account management, I would say, is about 40 to 50. We'll go 30 to 40% of my work day, right? So I talked about prospecting. The life cycle of any startup and business is bringing in new business, new physicians, new hospitals. Super important, and you need to be really good at that. The next would be project management. Once you qualified those prospects, people are interested, how do you get them from day one? How do we do this? I don't know. The doctor's asking you. To a finished contract so they could use your product commercially and benefit patients. And then the third big task is increasing utilization or true account management with these hospitals. How can you support and continue to be an account manager, provide resources to support the hospital and increase sales? This is a really high level day in the life of an AI MedTech sales rep. I wanted to talk about more AI and then typically, the three main challenges and what I do in a day. I'm going to do more day in the life, breaking down actual days, day, hour, minute, the second, to see what you guys think about that. But thank you for watching. This is Medical Device Matt. All of you have been super amazing in the support. It means a lot. It truly does. This is something I'm really passionate about, and your comments, your watches, your views, all super meaningful to me. So if you got any questions, leave them below. Happy to answer. I tried my best to answer every single comment. We'll see you on the next episode.